Hey everyone, Mango7Roll here. How we doing today? Welcome to another episode of Epic 7. It is another 1:30 in the morning video. I just got 15 pings as I was trying to sleep. So that usually means there is something good, and I'm pretty excited. I've already got the page opened up, and I see balance adjustments, which is super awesome. And I noticed they're saying Charlotte remake. So that implies that she's not just going to get like a slight balance adjustment. She's going to get a remake to her full kit. And I believe this would be the first time like that really happened, assuming they go all out with a remake. So let's dive into this and cross our fingers. I've had Charlotte 6-star Awaken for a while. Some of my best friends on the internets have also been using Charlotte since day one. I love to use her in Raid. I think she's fantastic there, and I just wish she was a little better everywhere else. She also fits perfectly with my Fire Waifu team, so here's hoping. Okay, so hello heirs, this is Epic 7. We would like to thank our heirs for the incredible support while you've continued on your adventures in E7. With this post, we will be showing our players the balance adjustments that are set to occur on the update. I think I'm missing some things. Yeah, there we go. I was like, what's going on? On February 20th, so 13 days from now, 11 heroes and 4 artifacts will be improved, as well as Charlotte remake that is scheduled for March. Okay, this is insane. Through this balance adjustment, there will be improvements for heroes and artifacts that are difficult to utilize. Additionally, in this adjustment, no nerfs will be carried out. Interesting. I actually am one of the people for nerfs, but I seem to see that they don't like doing that. Maybe it's because the initial outrage that happened when the Ravi nerf happened at the very start of the game. But I think nerfs are healthy for games. Oh, lordy, that's a Melissa. Oh, lordy, that's a CC. Oh, lordy, that is a Tenebria. Oh, I thought that was Kawana. I was so excited. It is Kawazu, not Kawana. So they're targeting 3 fire heroes. Rose is kind of an interesting one. I feel like she doesn't need it. Larissa is kind of an interesting one too. I feel like she doesn't need it. Specter, question mark? Fighter Maya. I don't have Fighter Maya. I don't know how you can make Fighter Maya better. Celestial Mercedes is pretty pog. Doris, really good for new players, although new players kind of have their a Momo now, but this is a less investment starter. And Rework. Okay. Holy Sacrifice, Shamadra Staff, Ubers is 2 Dignisorb. Darn, it's not one of the ones I have like a buttload of. Okay, so okay. So before I read this, Melissa is plus 15. I 15'd her immediately. I've tried to use her so much. She's one of my favorite characters of all time, if not my favorite. She has my favorite skill 3 and a skill 2 animation. It's insane. Please let her be usable. So the problem with my eyes with Melissa is skill 3 and a skill 2 with immortality is what she's intended to do. So she protects herself, right? But it feels like half the time you try to skill 3, you're dead before your skill 2 procs and before you get immortal up. So if you try to skill 3, a Ken, for example, you're probably dead on a counterattack. If you try to skill 3 anything, you're probably dead to Charles double critting. There's just not much they can do. And also, she seems to have very, 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 very low base HP, which just kills bruiser mages. But anyways, let's see. Okay, so Manifestation is attacks by unleashing the air in a range, granting immortality to the caster for 1 turn. Skill cooldown is reset when the enemy is defeated. Wow. Okay, so I wasn't expecting that. So that means you can skill 3, skill 2, get immortality up, and if you kill something, you've got immortality up again. Without reading the rest of this, I feel like that's going to make something like oxlotting her maybe useful. I also tried to use Edika's on her, so I'd have to change Edika's for that build too. And Blood Bloom dispels all buffs from the enemy before attacking. Wow. Wow, I did not expect that either. I don't know what to think of that either, because that doesn't solve the 2 problems or the 3 problems I had. But I think this is a fantastic change. I'm interested to see what they said too. So this will allow you to just blow anybody up with immunity, with invincibility, with anything. But then again, you have to land the debuff, and you do not have any room for effectiveness on her build. Just to be brutally honest, you don't have the room for effectiveness if you want to survive, if you want to do damage, or if you want to be fast. So Melissa was originally designed as a hero who can deal significant damage to 2 enemies at the same time through her curse ability. And again, one of the big problems with the curse and Melissa in general is if you try to utilize her skill set like she's supposed to be used, everybody just resists. Everybody either has immunity or they just straight up resist. Like if you try to, like when you're using Melissa, sorry, this is going to be a long video, by the way. I'm ready to talk tonight. But if you start off with Melissa, you usually have 2 choices. One is you can pick a target, try to land curse on them, and then pick another target and try to kind of take both down equally. This is often how I feel like I should use her, just to spread the curse damage out. But if you pick a target and try to land a curse and you do not land the curse, you're just done. You're not one-shotting anything after, nothing's happening. One of the biggest downfalls with her is that situation. Alternatively, you can hit the one target and then hit the one target again with skill 3 into skill 2. And at that point, you don't even need the curse. The curse doesn't do anything because she's already dead, you know? Like, skill 3 is almost enough to kill most things. So skill 2 is just overkill after, and it's basically just protecting you with the immortality. So that is an interesting situation to be in, and I don't think this solves this, but I'm not going to argue. Melissa will have more opportunities to inflict her curse debuff. I mean, I guess at this point you just need to build her really effective, but you're not going to do enough damage. She'll be able to deal damage and inflict. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, there we go. They target it. Heroes who do not have high effect resistance. So that is something that hopefully helps out, but I don't know. I don't know what to think. I don't think this is going to change. Like, it changes a lot, don't get me wrong, especially manifestation, because manifestation does help the one scenario where I said where you skill 3, skill 2 of the same person. But I feel like we're not really using her curse is the problem. With buffs effects during the early game, we hope that heirs utilize damage dealing capacity to remain immortal. Okay, that's pretty cool. As for Cece, what to say about Cece? The big problem I have with her is she has too low chance to do anything, and in this meta of counterattack, she has 2 AoEs. So she finds herself proccing SSB, she finds herself proccing ML Ken, she finds herself proccing Charles. Basically, she just procs everything until the end of time with all of her AoEs, and oftentimes she AoEs and nothing happens, even with high effect resist or high effect rate, because she has kind of low rates on her debuffs rather. I'm not sure how to fix this. I'm really interested to see what they did. So, attacks all enemies with a magical spear with a 35% chance up to 50% chance to... Oh, I might as well read the awakened one. So this goes from 85% chance to 100% chance to decrease attack for 2 turns. So they just ignored the bottom half. Okay, so that solves one of the problems. That definitely solves one of the problems, but it still doesn't make her too use... Oh god, I just read number 2. Okay, this does it. This is good. So with Ruinous Retribution, attacks all enemies with a spear infused with dark energy with a 100% chance to provoke for 1 turn, granting immunity to allies for 2 turns. That's pretty good. That's a lot of immunity. So this kind of solves the problem a little bit, where whenever she attacks, she just takes too much back. Even with the ridiculous amount of HP and defense you can build her, she still just gets bullied. Just bullied because the counterattack people just do so ridiculous damage that she just destroyed. She just gets destroyed all the time. I've tried it so many times. My CC is like plus 10. I'm really excited for this. This is an insane change. Absolutely insane change. So, however, she was relatively difficult to utilize. With this balance adjustment, she will be improved so that her heirs can find more content where they can use CC. This will be enacted by adding an additional buff effect that can influence the battle. CC will gain the ability to grant immunity to all allies for 2 turns when she uses Ruinous Retribution. I don't know the cooldown on that, but she does have pretty high base speed. It's pretty easy, in quotes, to build a relatively fast, tanky, and bruisery CC. And with the way her skill set is changing right now, She doesn't lose anything, right? She gains a bunch, so that's pretty exciting. Yeah, this is pretty cool. Regardless of her health, that's one of the biggest problems. Was like it's so bad when you do something like that. You AOE and you don't land any debuffs, and then they counter and kill you. It's like, well, yeah, that was cool. That was fun. This is great. So that's awesome. I don't even know entirely what she does, so I'm pretty excited to read this. I do have 2 Tenebrias, so maybe this means I'll build her, but I have so many fire units. By the way, they really desperately, like, they strive, you know? They're watching me. They're behind my back right now being like, we're never gonna buff Araminta. She's never getting an exclusive equipment. You know, like GM Crow's back there just doing it. But anyway, so Tenebria attacks the enemy with a 70% chance, so that just ups the chance of sleep. Number 2, yeah, it just ups the chance of sleep. That's good. That's one of the biggest problems with a lot of units. When you have somebody like Dizzy who just lands all of the debuffs, if you have somebody who lands a debuff half the time, it's like, you know, maybe not quite. So this is cool. It just increases everything, so she can better utilize her debuffs. Okay. The probability for Tenebria to inflict sleep will also be increased to a maximum of 70%. 50% in combat readiness. Okay. I have the hiccups. That's okay. Okay, so I don't know what to say about Tenebria yet. So this before poison energy, 70% chance to inflict poisons. The skill cannot trigger a counterattack. Okay. Wow. And attacks 2 enemies. Dear Lord, Specter Tenebria. Specter Tenebria next in the Mystic banner? That seems insane, right? Because she was already bonkers. One of the big problems with her, again, was getting counterattacked, I feel, would be a big problem, you know? Like, when I fought her, I feel like counterattacking her was pretty solid of a plan. Hitting 2 enemies with this also makes it so you can run something like a double dark team and still cleave people down and still have that chance to just brutalize one of the backline people. This seems really good, like really obnoxiously good. Maybe I'm wrong, but that seems insane. And also this makes sense, by the way. With her passive, she shouldn't be able to be counterattacked. So with this balance, we improve the effectiveness of her poison blast. Yep. If Endless Nightmare is on cooldown, which it always is, Tenebria will attack 2 enemies, and the skill cannot trigger counterattack from her enemies. Furthermore, when the condition is met, she will target 2 enemies at the same time, dealing the same amount of damage. Was question number 2. We expect her to become the most threatening choice. That's insane. I want Specter Tenebria so bad. She is so good. Like, am I overreacting to Specter Tenebria because I think she just, like, was already in a really good space with insane gear, and the possibilities now using her just seems so not so. Also, I'm not sure what artifact people run Specter Tenebria on, but imagine just tossing a like an Ayala or an Abyssal Crown on her. Like I said, I don't know what they do, or like Caladra or something like that, and proccing those debuffs on the secondary target too. That seems pretty solid. That's a really good way to RNG your way to victory in Guild War. Okay, so I didn't think Rose needed a buff. I thought she was fantastic already. But Shield of Light before, they didn't highlight stuff here. So what's the change? Covers the ally, dispelling 2 debuffs. That's the same thing. That's the same thing. Okay, I'll read the comments. Maybe they clarified. But grants increased defense to the caster for 2 turns. Okay, that's not bad. That's a solid little buff just to herself. Rose was originally designed to be a hero who increases the CR and defensive capabilities of allies. However, since there were many situations where her defensive abilities were not effective, after this, Rose will be able to grant increased defense buff to herself for 2 turns. Expect her to survive better until she can use Shield of Light. So they want her to, like, buff and then follow it up in another turn. Barrier strength granted will double. Okay, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. They're just doubling it. That's why it doesn't actually change anything since it's multipliers. Okay. Clarissa, increase attack speed by 10%. Rage cannot be dispelled. I mean, I I don't think rage should be able to be dispelled. So the other one attacks all enemies, inflicting 2 bleeding effects instead of 1, and a 50% chance to decrease defense for 2 turns when the caster is enraged, damage is dealt. Okay. So that seems pretty good. This might make it so people use her skill 3 in everywhere now, right? Like a lot of people that use Clarissa just use her as an auto attack bot for something like Wyvern. Okay, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Kawazu, I don't know what Kawazu does, but decreasing defense for 1 turn is always good. I'm assuming that's his skill 1. Oh, for 2 turns. For 2 turns. Okay. Okay, that's a cool change. Fighter Maya. Provoke chance increases. Oh, it's Soulburn. That makes sense. It's Soulburn. It's not just like passive. Okay. So they're losing the damage. I don't understand. This seems not like a nerf. No, this kind of seems like a nerf, does it not? Because like you don't if you bat somebody out of the park, you don't need another turn. You're already gonna win. You need that extra damage to make sure you bat somebody out of the park. And this just increases her chance to provoke. It doesn't ignore ER or something like that. So I'm kind of confused by this. At first glance, I feel like that's a nerf, but maybe you guys that have Fighter Maya that are not me can tell me. So, who has great survivability, she will be improved so that her presence as battle can be maximized. To this end, she'll be given an additional turn when she successfully defeats an enemy hero. In addition, the damage output for her skill will be increased so that it matches the damage dealt when soul burned. Okay, I take everything I just said back. In other words, the damage she can deal with finishing attack after this balance adjustment will be equal to the damage she now deals when soul burned. Paused the video and called me bad. I read it. Don't worry, we got there. So as a soul burn effect for the fishing attack will now become the base attack damage. New soul burn will become this. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. That's a good buff. And it's a confusing buff because she literally did not need that at all. There are so many people that needed a buff. Why her? So let's do Mercedes. So soul burn here, all cooldowns decrease by 2. Oh, so it's gonna let you finale and then burn the dimensional so you can finale again right after. That makes a lot of sense. So Mercedes will be able to effectively use her finale disruption dimensional rupture combo more than once. Okay, that makes sense. Not a big deal at all, but it is a change. Okay, so Light's Curtain recovers an ally's health and increases their CR by 30% with light magic. Before covers an ally's health and increases the combat readiness by 30% with light magic. Healing is proportionate to the ally's max health. I'm guessing they just increase the healing, right? And Doris will instead only heal the increased amount. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, they're just making it so you don't need the heal over time. I really like when people have synergies like that, but it oftentimes just makes them kind of not so good. So Wreck Roar, an all-star early game, not so much now. Every time an enemy dies, all allies recover 20% health instead of 50%. And the caster's combat readiness increases by 10%. Okay. That's I mean, that's a buff, so there's that. And the artifacts here. Holy Sacrifice. Chance to be revived with 25% health. Granted a barrier for 1 turn. I like barriers for 1 turn. Barrier strength is proportionate. Yeah, I really like barriers for 1 turn. So that will help survive. And maybe help that crowd just live a little bit longer to get that out there. That's not bad at all. Magistaff definitely needed a buff. Increase the effect resist of all allies by 20%. That seems pretty solid. Like, that's a pretty good passive. Um, especially for people like me who only have one Rod of Amaryllis, who only have one Celestine. Like, there's a ton of people that just I feel like I can't use because I don't have a healing artifact for them. I don't have a second Rod of Amaryllis, for example. So this will allow me to use that on somebody. I'm not sure how good this makes it, but 20 ER is a lot of ER, especially for your whole team, right? Like, that's 60% ER in Guild War. That's 80% ER in Arena. That seems pretty solid. And especially if you put it on somebody like maybe Elena, but then you lose Megahara's Tome. But you do get 20% ER on top of her 50%, giving her 70%. Okay, so I'm pretty excited to see who to use that on. I have no idea who, but it seems good. This is just additional damage, ignores the critical effect. Will deal additional damage. Furthermore, given the increase in additional damage. Okay. Okay, I'm not sure where we'll use this. Warrior artifacts are so good, right? Maybe for like a non-critical build unit? I'm not sure. I have no idea for that one. Okay, now we have Dingus Orb here. And yes, I know it's Dignus, but it's Dingus in my heart and you can't stop me. This one here increases the damage of the next attack by 15%. After you get a non-barrier attack skill. So you can use something, or a non-attack skill. So you can use something like a skill 3 from your Seed of Menial, get yourself all the barriers, and get yourself 15% attack, and then blow somebody up. So that's a pretty sweet buff to Dingus Orb. And now the juicy part. I'm excited for this. So Charlotte was previously designed to be a bruiser hero, one that should be significantly effective in long-term battles that require many turns. Therefore, we designed the focus mechanism so that Charlotte can deal a significant amount of damage through the use of her skill Vortex. In practical situations where Charlotte is used, there were issues such as 1 Ground Slam, a skill where Charlotte can gain CR and focus, had too many variables to be taken into consideration. That's one thing I've noticed in this game. If there's 2 options of a skill, there's a very good chance that unit just sucks because somebody else does both of those in one hit. Traits for stacking focus being too difficult to be satisfied. These issues made her only viable in long-term values, and even then, like, good luck surviving. We found out that Charlotte has structural issues which cannot be solved via buffs. There we go. This is one of the things I was hoping for, that they were willing to do like changes to you, therefore straight up changes. So okay, so let's start off with number 1. So first off, focus is changing to fighting spirit. The first change to be applied will make it so that Charlotte gains fighting spirit instead of focus. The remade Charlotte will be available to receive attacks from the enemy and then turn the tide of battle by utilizing powerful skills. In this regard, we feel that the fighting spirit mechanism is a better fit for the new design rather than the focus. Also to note, Charlotte can hold Elbrus. So yeah. So dual sword attacks with dual swords with a 35% up to 50% chance to decrease attack for 1 turn. When the caster is buffed and activates his skill in their turn, so that stops counterattack there. That's what they're trying to stop there. The attack will target all enemies, increase the caster's combat readiness by 20%. This skill does not trigger dual attack. Interesting. Interesting, and it can go up to 50% here. So she's losing her defense break on her skill 1. That seems interesting because that was the better of the debuffs. We will first inform our heirs of the remake to be enacted in regards to the skill Dual Swords. Previously, Dual Swords was a basic skill that could grant the caster increased attack or defense to the enemy's defense. Since the mechanics of the skill were too complicated to use in an ordinary situation, the utility of the skill was quite ambiguous. In order to address this issue, we will remake the skill so that Dual Swords can be more effective while maintaining conditionally. The remade Charlotte overall will be very sensitive to enemy attacks, so the debuff inflicted by dual swords will be changed from decreased defense to decreased attack. Furthermore, this skill will be changed to a conditional AoE attack so that her impact per turn become more significant. As her basic attack becomes an AoE attack if the condition is met, the damage output of the skill will be decreased by 10%. Interesting. So one thing I can say before reading on just my first thoughts is the problem with giving fire units an AoE attack, especially one that you can't always control, is there's people like SSB and there's people like ML Ken and there's people like accidentally killing Arbiter Vildred, and there's people like Charles who just automatically crit on everybody. So it always worries me, right? That's so hard to use in the meta right now. One of the big problems with Cecilia going back. So before with Will of the Swamp, slams the ground with a 35%. That was one of the big problems, by the way. 35% chance was not enough. So now it's a passive by the looks of things. When attacked, the caster is granted increased attack and defense and requires 10 fighting spirit up to 20 with the +5 skill. When attacked during the caster's turn, acquired fighting spirit is doubled. Okay, so if she gets counterattacked, she will double the fighting spirit gained. And increased attack and defense can only be triggered once per turn. So is increased attack and defense a buff, or is it just like a passive buff to their stats? Because they usually say attack buff or defense buff, right? I guess we'll read. So Charlotte's skill 2, Ground Slam, will be changed to a passive called Will of the Swamp. Although it is essential for Charlotte to use Ground Slam in order to maximize the damage output for Vortex, relatively low base speed, which is an important stat, made it very difficult for our heirs to use Charlotte in practical situations. Through this remake, we will change the conditions for acquiring resources to being attacked, and as well as allow Charlotte to temporarily grant herself increased attack and defense. By utilizing the newly added increased defense buff, so it is a buff, she'll be able to better deal with sequential attacks from the enemy. This, in turn, will accelerate the pace at which she will be able to use her skill Vortex, allowing her to deal large amounts of damage to the enemy. Furthermore, if she is attacked, more effectively counteract enemy combinations which rely on counterattacks. Interesting. Okay, again, so they want it to be dispellable, I guess. That's the only thing I can think of there. So Vortex here, this was just AoE damage basically with some shenanigans. So now it consumes 100 fighting spirit, so it takes all of their fighting spirit, and it takes no cooldown. Cuts all enemies while spinning with a 75% chance to make them unhealable. Always unhealable. Ooh, but it will always rely on a critical hit. I like that part. Interesting. So she can also just use it twice in a row with the soul burn here because it has no cooldown. And it's a 10 soul burn, which seems like a lot. But I guess at that point, you have to get to that point. Okay, interesting. I'm not sure what to think about that. Final part to be discussed is Charlotte's core skill Vortex. Previously, Vortex had a high damage output and certain conditions were met. However, the condition itself was too difficult to be satisfied. Moreover, since his skill focused solely on dealing large amounts of damage and there were no additional effects given to the skill, our heirs could not find an effective usage. On the remake planned, reliance on the critical hit stat will greatly significantly decrease the gear requirements. Additionally, with the unhealable debuff given, it'll be more effective choice against enemies who rely on healing or lifesteal. Okay, so interesting. These were, I'm going to scroll back to the top here. These were pretty impressive. There were a lot of insightful changes done here and nothing felt really dumb. There were some obviously units that were not given love, like newer units getting love instead of older ones, but overall I was pretty happy. So I'm just gonna do a quick run through of these from what I can remember, just to like reiterate what I think. I think Melissa's change is fantastic, but I don't know how much of a change it's actually going to be. I think Cecilia should be insane now. Like that should make her good enough. 2 turns of immunity is pretty insane. Tenebria doesn't really change much, I think. Rose doesn't really change much. Clarissa, I don't think changes much. Her defense break doesn't really it was only 50%, I think, right? So it's not really consistent to do anything. No idea what Kawazu does. Specter Tenebria is bonkers. Out of this world. Knocked it out of the park bonkers. Fighter Maya got buffed. Sure. Celeste Mercedes, just unnecessary change. Not an unnecessary change, but a change that shouldn't really do anything where she's used, right? Doris, pretty solid buff. Requiem War, pretty solid buff. Holy Sacrifice, pretty solid buff. Maybe that makes Holy Sacrifice better for non-Crow units, to try to help them survive a little bit. Shermad's Staff, I feel like that's a fantastic change. It does something unique-ish, and I like it. Uber's Tooth, I have no idea. Dignus Orb, I feel like, is just going to be another pretty big damage-dealing machine for somebody like Cdom, but Cdom often has to hold a tome, so it's really confusing, and I'm not sure, but somebody is going to break Dingus Orb, period. So that's all I know. Somebody's going to break Dingus Orb. If they're not in the game yet, they will be later, and they will break it. As for Charlotte, I'm pleasantly confused. I have no idea. I don't know what to really think of her. I feel like her kit is obviously better than what it was before. I feel like she has 2 semi-useless debuffs right now, decreased attack and unable to be healed, because while they said you really want to unable to be healed people that heal all the time, those people always have infinity effect resistance, so you're never landing it anyway, and often those are ice units. We'll see how her skill kind of flows. That said, being able to pile up 20 souls and then just going skill 3, slow burn twice in a row, that seems pretty solid. Not sure what else to think about her, but the AoE attack seems pretty good. Getting countered on her turn is not terrible, because she will get that extra stats to kind of boost her up. But I feel like she's just gonna die. I feel like with the critical hit change is the best thing to happen to her, by the way. That's by far the best thing to happen to her. But I feel like with it being on her skill 3, one of the reasons that makes ML Ken so insane is that's affected to his skill 1, right? So I'm not sure how that's going to end up, because you're still going to have to last until Fighting Spirit, and all you're doing until then is attacking somebody for attack down, and probably not very much damage. When you do your attack, you're probably not doing anything, right? That said, if you get countered by, how much do you get? I want to scroll back to Charlotte. If you get countered by so if you attack on your turn, let's play this through against a regular team. So if you do your skill 1 attack, you get countered by assuming you have 10 fighting spirit, which you probably will by the time you go for the first time. It is 10, right? When the caster is buffed. Oh, it's when the caster is buffed. Okay. So when the caster is buffed, and she's going to be buffed when she does go, especially since your passive can proc your buff as well. Okay, so let's picture this. Sorry, I'm mumbling over my words as I do this, but this is kind of confusing. So if you attack first turn, let's say you haven't been hit yet, so you have 0 fighting spirit. You attack first turn, you AoE. There's a 110% chance Charles counterattacks you. So Charles counterattacks you, gives you 20 fighting spirit because it's your turn. Charles goes twice because Charles is Charles. You now have 40 fighting spirit. There's a good chance that Charles crits twice and you die, but we'll ignore that part. And then after that, there's a good chance SSB does her counterattack too, because all the teams have SSB Charles, and that is another 20%, so you're at a 60% fighting spirit just from that. And then if they're with like an FCC or something too, so you bring it again against the trio, you're up to 80%, and then you're up to, okay, that's a lot. So you can theoretically, on like not even worse or best case scenarios, but on like an average case scenario, you'll have Will of the Stomp ready by your second turn. I would say almost like 100% of the time. So that's a lot of damage to pop off right off the start of the gates, and especially too if you have 10 souls or something like that as well, right? You're gonna pop those off right off the bat too. So yeah, I'm not sure what to say yet, but I'm pretty excited for these changes. They're all pretty great. They all address things that often need to be addressed. I noticed they focused on fire units, it seemed like, which is kind of unfortunate. I do wish they would do some nerfs, but it is what it is. So anyways, that's going to be it for now. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody's still here. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe as always, and I'll talk to you wonderful people tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye, everybody.